This is Surviving the Music Industry.
That sounds sick.
I didn't think about how that sounded.
Heyo, we're back. This is Brandon from Surviving the Music Industry, SMI. You're listening to it. You guys know. You already know what this is. Thanks for coming back. If you're brand new to the show, I have pretty gnarly conversations with some pretty gnarly creatives, some business type every once in a while, but don't be confused, all right? This is something I run into on the most typical of conversations, surviving the music industry. They think it's kind of like, oh, well, it's only talk about a business in the music industry. No, I can't even do that. There's no way I could even do that. It's all about me surviving the music industry, all right? And I just happen to have pretty cool conversations with really interesting people, and we talk about their life, all right? So I just want to set the record straight. The show's not about them. It's about me, all right? All jokes aside, it's I'm not doing too well in the music industry. I don't. Is anybody? It's always been like that. They always say, "Oh, we got a 1% rise this year." All those 1% in the past 10 years don't add up to 10%. So, especially now. But that's kind of where we're at. All right, one thing I might need to make fun of just a little bit, the live shows, the streaming. I think we got to come up with something better. Because have you guys? Okay, now I'm talking to creatives right now. Have you watched a live streaming show and been, oh, well, I feel great about myself. I feel entertainingly fulfilled. All right, now Gen Pop, now I'm asking you, have you watched a live streaming performance and thought, oh, wow, I couldn't have the real thing, but this will do? Yeah, see, that's a toughie. It's toughy toughs. So, I mean, we're doing the best that we can, right? It's this weird situation of, you're making the best of the Black Plague Part 2. And this is just kind of where we're at as far as creatives. I don't know what else to do with my hands, and so I'll just turn a camera on and just do the thing I always do. Sometimes that doesn't translate very well on the streaming deal. I don't know if there's anybody just like absolutely killing it. I mean, maybe the John Mayer situation, but the dude's a personality. Like, the dude can just kind of roll with it. So, I don't know, to kind of make some noise or be the thing or do the thing, I feel like artists and songwriters, they kind of need to figure out what that next thing is to keep people entertained and kind of keep them going on whatever they're doing on the streaming deal. But you know what? I can't say too much because I wrestle with it too. Because it's the thing of like, well, maybe I should do something. Maybe I should just hit the old live button and wait for the 3 people to kind of sit there. I honestly kind of thought about watching Bob Ross and just putting on the live feed and just everybody just watch Bob Ross with me. But it's just the thing of like, you don't know what to do in this time, right? And I'm definitely in that ship and boat too. I just haven't pulled the trigger on a live situation yet. Because, I'm kind of anti-cameras when it comes to having conversations because it's that intimate thing. And once you introduce cameras, it's like it starts becoming a show. And that's the last thing I really wanted because, I mean, we have some pretty cool, like, in-depth conversations. But I think as far as you creatives out there, like, doing the thing, you got to step it up just a little bit. I don't know what that means, but keeping it more entertaining for what that's worth. And that's tough. I don't have any answers. This is not a question and I have the answers to give to you kind of podcast. You're barking up the wrong tree. I think those guys are full of shit to begin with. But yeah, you're definitely not going to get that from me at all. But what I try to do is stick with what I know. That's the podcasting thing, and I think it's where everybody's at. You're sticking with what you know, and you're doing what you know. I'm sticking with podcasting. I'm sticking with just talking over the digital airwaves and having pretty cool conversations, see what pops up. I never know what's going to happen. So that's what happened with, especially, did I mention I had this conversation today? Jarrod Dickenson. He's a gnarly dude. I didn't know anything about him till the old publicist decided they want to do their job, and I got a good publicist. Old Jarrod does. Big champions of this guy. They were like, you need to get to know this person. He's got records out. I just didn't know. There's so much music in the world and the headspace and the land space of all creativity. And kind of did a dumpster dive in all of his stuff after we got through talking, but definitely dived into his new record that's not out yet, but from what I've learned, it's out in Europe somewhere. Did a European release, going through some legal battles, doing the thing for Ready the Horses. I would love everybody to listen to this record. It's amazing. I was so shocked and kind of in awe of just kind of what it was. It's a mix of soul and like the sounds of Stax and the Muscle Shoals deal. I mean, he had some Muscle Shoal players play on the thing. Recorded it in the UK. Heard he's kind of a big deal in the UK, so we tap into that a little bit in conversation. But yeah, he's got a record coming out. A tentatively US release date. It's going to be in May. I think the best way that you can definitely know, stick to his socials, Jarrod Dickenson, at Jarrod Dickenson. I think you guys get down. I mean, he already has some songs out. He's released, I know there was one track, Way Past Midnight. That was the first one. But the newest one was Gold Rush. And that's what this conversation that we had. And it's kind of based around. I'm glad I got to know Jarrod. And now back to the thing I was talking about. They think it's like a music industry thing. It's not, but we honestly kind of tap into it. I usually don't share my opinion on a lot of things, especially in conversation. But I don't know. Jarrod and I kind of went back and forth, and we found some common ground on the thing of deals and like state of the industry, which that's the most like nerdy, suit talk I have probably ever talked about, unless I talk to somebody in a suit, I guess. But yeah, but so forewarned, the Gen Pop out there, but I'm sure the creatives could get into it, but also kind of give you a little insight into our minds, how we feel, trying to survive the music industry. It's always a toughie and a roughie for me, but I think it's tough for everybody. Again, just be well, love one another, be kind for what that's worth, and put a mask on. I don't care where you're at, put a mask on. But I had this gnarly conversation with Jarrod. Got to know him just a little bit. Getting that record that's going to be out, hopefully in May. Ready the Horses. I want you guys to hear this record. But for now, you can enjoy Gold Rush and the release before that, Way Past Midnight. It's got this like roots, earthy sound where it's not perfect, and it was cut to tape, and it was this beautiful thing of great art, some thought, some really deep thinking went behind some of the songs, and we kind of get into it in this conversation. Again, go visit the my Waco dude, Jarrod Dickenson. Of course, you can go to his website, keep up with tour dates. He got smashed just like everybody else, jarroddickenson.com. So they're doing the reschedule on everything. Had a bunch of UK dates, but again, that got changed. Flip of the script. So they're working the kinks out of that, just like everybody else. So stay tuned. Best way you can stay tuned, especially Jarrod's schedule. Social at Jarrod Dickenson. Of course, go visit that website, jarroddickenson.com. But you also go to smipodcast.com, and we got a little page for Jarrod there. Go visit all that stuff and everything there. Go listen to his music, streaming platforms. It's your elder millennials saying, just go listen to it. It's a jam. It's really good. Like artistically, it's all there. He's got the thing. He does the thing. He knows what he's doing. All right, folks. Well, here's Jarrod. I kind of, in case you guys might not pick up in course conversation, I have a little bit of an infatuation about where Jarrod is from. And we kind of get into it. But anyway, here's Jarrod.
Hey.
Dude.
How you doing?
I'm all right, man. I kind of want to ask the same thing because that's what you're supposed to do. But I kind of already know the answer, I feel like.
Yeah, I think we're all in a pretty similar boat at the minute.
Okay, well, first, when you phoned in, I saw Waco. Are you in?
Yeah.
Are you in Waco right now?
I'm not. I'm in Nashville, but I'm originally from Waco, and my cell phone has remained there.
Man, there's like no fascinating place to me other than Waco, Texas. And it's only just because of David Koresh. Like, I'm telling you.
yeah.
Like, that whole era in the 90s when Waco kind of went down, like, I'm still fascinated by that.
It was such a bizarre and obviously terrible thing.
Right.
It happened when I was, maybe 8 or 9 years old, something like that. And it wasn't even in Waco, really. It was like 20, 30 miles outside of Waco, but we were the closest city, so we got all the credit.
Yeah.
If
something crazy is going to happen, I guess we'll take it. Waco will take it.
Exactly.
Besides Dr. Pepper, the real thing, I mean, we'll just take the crazy David Koresh. So.
There you go. Well, most people don't even know about Dr. Pepper, so you're definitely up on your Waco trivia.
Oh, dude, I am in the know of Waco. I'm from Texas too, but
oh, cool. What part?
Well, it's kind of fake Texas. I mean, Texarkana.
Right. It counts.
I think it counts. I was at least born in Texas, and so
there you go.
I wear the belt buckle.
Counts.
Yeah, I think it totally counts. But there's this rad restaurant in Waco too. That's amazing. And I was trying to tell my wife about it because she goes to school at Baylor, and it's like a Tex-Mex Mexican joint with a parrot, like a huge parrot on the side of the building. You know what I'm talking about?
The Memphis downtown.
Yeah, it had to be downtown. And so, what's it called?
It's probably Ninfas, NINFA''S. That's what I would guess. If it's not that, it could be. Oh man, I'd have to think about it. But if it was downtown, it was probably Ninfas. That was one of the first things to kind of move back into downtown Waco before anything else did.
Dude, I'll take it because it's been bugging me for years what that place is, and I know that Google exists. And I could simply Google it. But
what's the fun in that?
Well, the thing is, like, how many conversations do I have, like, from people from Waco that will actually know what I'm talking about? And so, as soon as I saw Waco on the old cell phone, I thought, oh, here's my chance. So you just totally walked into a Waco trap.
Well, I love it.
I love Waco, to be honest. I mean, that whole side of Texas. Okay, so wait a second. You're in Nashville right now.
Yeah.
Do you live in Nash?
We do, yeah. My wife and I moved here almost 3 years ago now from Brooklyn. Hard to believe it's been 3 years, but I guess it has.
Man, you're kind of all over the place now. All right, so you're from Texas, though. Is that what I'm getting?
From Texas, yeah. Grew up in Waco, lived there for 20 years, moved down to Austin, went to school at Texas, and played in the Austin music scene, and then from 2010 on, I've kind of bounced around. I was in Nashville for a little over a year, then moved out to LA for 6 months, which was about a year too long.
Yeah, I completely understand that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great people out there, and still have a few friends out that way, but it was not for me.
Yeah, it's not for me either. I lived in Hollywood for like about a month, and if there's any like worse place probably to live, it could be Hollywood. And so it was not for me. Like this East Texas kid, like playing rock music, it just didn't mesh with my like 4-year-old humor and personality. And so there's no room for a 4-year-old in Hollywood.
No, definitely not.
No. Okay. Well, dude, I heard about, and I'm kind of looking over your tour schedule too. And man, so, I mean, you were stacked this whole year, and you got a record coming out, and you're releasing some singles and stuff. How much has Rona like decimated your life right now?
I mean, it's certainly done a number, on us like everyone else. I mean, we did have a pretty nice looking tour schedule, which, like everyone, it's all been either canceled or postponed. We've rescheduled a few dates for later on in the year, but no one knows how long this thing's going to last either,
Right.
So you're kind of just hoping that these dates that you're working so hard to reschedule are going to go ahead. But yeah, it's been tricky, man. We had 2 solid months worth of touring that's been taken away. And then, side hustles are drying up too, because a lot of businesses are having to close. So, even those things that we would sometimes do when we were off the road to help pay the bills, those aren't there either. So yeah, it's tricky. We're still trying to figure it out, hoping, the word decimate doesn't describe it, but who knows, it could.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of apply my own personal life. I mean, I own a kid, and so he doesn't go back to school till like May 1st. And so between now and May, like, my life is decimated. Like, I'm ready for that dude to go back to school. And
I'm sure.
And so I just kind of think it's kind of the same like with tour schedules, like if the government is basically nixing public schools all the way up like to May, like what does that mean for like the rest, especially for the country? But I also see a ton of UK dates as well, like pretty much all of April too. So all of those are being like rescheduled. And
yeah, so the April UK dates, we've just gotten those rescheduled to September, so that part's good.
Wow, cool.
But the festivals that we were going to do, those have been canceled. We had some Scandinavian dates that were about to be confirmed for early May before all of this happened, and obviously none of that's going ahead. Dates here in the States that have been postponed, but again, whether they will actually be rescheduled or whether once they're rescheduled it will work for our calendar, who knows? So you've got to kind of treat it as if it's just not going to happen, and then if it does, it's a nice surprise. But it's going to be interesting once the dust settles, because everybody's pushing tours to the end of the year. So even if it happens, I think you've got to expect, one, venue availability is going to be a nightmare, because everybody's trying to tour at the same time. And then you've also got to expect the turnout will be pretty low, just because of the sheer competition and the amount of conflict, and everybody's still going to be financially hurting, so they can only go to so many things. And, there's going to be a pretty big ripple effect, I think. And that's just for musicians in the music industry, not talking about small businesses or anything like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's tons of, like, the ripple effect is fascinating to me because, I mean, obviously there's, like, the scale of it, exactly what you described, like the sheer idea of, okay, shop is open, every booking agent, every musician's going to start booking clubs, and then... And then there's this competition thing. Well, who's going to be fighting for those spots, and how are we going to do it? But then there's like this side of my brain that's just kind of like, okay, we get out in the public. It's quote unquote safe. We go out there. Are we just basically going to kind of treat everybody like our Facebook friends? Like when we see them, it's just kind of like, oh, am I supposed to talk to you? Do I stand close to you? Do I say something? Like I just kind of feel like we're not going to know what to do with one another once we actually incorporate ourselves back into humanity. Like I just feel like there's just going to be sheer awkwardness. I'm already going through that with my neighbor. Like we did yesterday. Like he just like stood 6 feet, and then as soon as I dropped a ball or something and went to go pick it up, he took a step back. And so I think that also applies to what fans are going to be in closed areas in a concert. Like what is that awkwardness or that security is going to feel like once we kind of get the safe, the go ahead, like we could actually be in public. You're not going to feel safe. It does something to the psyche, I'm sure.
Well, definitely. I mean, I think there's a couple of points to that. One, live music and concerts were kind of the first to be full in all of this before businesses were closing and all of that. It's probably also going to be the last thing to be reinstated, because the whole premise is get people in a confined space together,
right?
Which goes against everything that we're currently being told is not cool. But then, once we do get that go ahead, I could see it either being everybody's really awkward and hesitant and not wanting to to get too close or have much contact, or it could be like the kid that moves out of his parents' house for the first time and just goes insane.
Yeah.
It could go either way, and we'll see which one it is, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, obviously nobody has a crystal ball. You don't know like what it's going to be in X amount of time. You just kind of have to handle with it. Are you keeping up with, especially like all these bills passing, and what does that mean for entertainers? Have you been keeping up with that?
Been trying to keep up with it a little bit, but then, none of it makes a whole lot of sense. And then as far as, like stimulus packages and all of that, I'm not entirely sure. I have a lot of faith that people like us are going to be getting helped out, but maybe that's just my natural cynicism shining through.
No, I'm with you. I'm a negative realist, and it's just kind of like, which is not the most popular person in the room, but
no,
it's the thing of, yeah, it is going to be like the last important thing, but we're also talking about, especially Nashville or just any kind of entertainment culture. Like, let's just use the United States. Like, the United States is an entertainment culture where if we don't have it, I almost feel like society kind of breaks down. I mean, look at streaming services from Netflix all the way to just even music consumption and just the sheer entertainment aspect of it. I mean, do you remember like when the writer strike happened, like in Hollywood? Like I remember.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was a huge deal, and it decimated TV budgets. It had put a lot of people out of work. It's going to be the same thing, totally different, I guess. But in this situation, but for music and just for touring schedules, you got to be creative, I guess, at this point, because I'm kind of with you too. I don't think the government is going to kind of bail out and help out the entertainment industry or just the working class musician or artist. I just don't think that's going to happen.
It'll be interesting to see how it works or doesn't work, because we are the kind of the black sheep of the workforce anyway, where we're self-employed. Your income stream is very broken up and inconsistent at the best of times.
Yeah, right.
So I'm just not sure that will be taken into account in these things. But who knows? Maybe I'll be wrong. Hopefully I'll be wrong.
I'm kind of in the same boat too. Dude, I hope I'm 100% wrong. But
yeah,
I don't know. I always kind of think back to like the Depression era, like people still got haircuts because, I mean, that was the most like safe position you could have during the Depression, because people still wanted to look good. The next situation, the best job you had was an entertainer, because people wanted to be entertained during this dark time. They didn't want to be reminded that they didn't have any money. And so
absolutely, yeah.
I think there's still a place and a chance for entertainment to do its job. But I think at the same time, we got to keep, you guys healthy so we can have these moments, have these records and these shows back on the road.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping. I mean, we are seeing people getting creative, and obviously the live streaming and everything is kind of taken off, and people seem to be really, welcoming to that kind of thing. So you are still seeing people find ways to be entertained, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a positive. Now, whether or not anyone's able to pay bills through it or not, who knows?
Right.
We're doing one of those today for the first time. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah. Make sure you pay your electric bill off of Facebook Live video.
Yeah, no kidding.
You're more of a positive guy than I am. Look at you. All right.
Trying anyway.
No, I mean, that's all that we could really try to do. I mean, I claim as a negative realist, but I mean, like, if you really go deep dive hardcore into that facet, I mean, there's no like sunshine in that whatsoever. It just kind of ruins everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I don't know. The sunshine in my week, though, was really diving. I got a preview of the full record, mind you. And dude, you should be freaking proud of this record.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really pleased with it.
Dude, I got to be honest. I got hooked up through your publicist. They said that I need to know you, and so I just listened to this record and I was blown away. So my next step is to kind of go do a dumpster dive and all your other stuff.
Well, I appreciate any dumpster diving you see fit to make.
Yeah, man, I kind of do that a lot, but the Waco thing totally makes sense to me because there was this tune, "A Cowboy in the Moon." That was was totally a cowboy song. Like you just don't hear like that prairie cowboy music much or a lot anymore. And I said, this dude, he at least knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. That one was an interesting one. That came, well, most of the record really came while I was living in Brooklyn, and I think that tune in particular was just sort of a nostalgic look back at life in the South. Not that I ever was a cowboy or lived on the prairie, but it's also just, as you know, kind of in the DNA down there, you know. And while I loved and still love New York, you know, you miss home, and that was sort of, that one actually sort of came out of every time I would go back to visit Waco or visit Austin. Each time it was almost unrecognizable because there's so much growth happening in both cities, really. So all the places that I grew up going to, or for Austin used to go to when I was in college, or venues that I played, they're all gone and different things were in their place. And so that tune just sort of came out of watching a world that you used to know change. And you know, rather than make it about growing up in Waco in the 90s and early 2000s, I tried to make it on the prairie and a cowboy.
Yeah. I love that you kind of picked up that it's in your DNA, because I really felt that. Because I mean, as a songwriter, you kind of feel like you can do anything, but it's got to come from an honest place, because let's face it, we're not actors. Like we can't, we really just can't like fake a song, or we can't like just put on this face or pretend to do something. And so when somebody I feel like is bold enough to write like an authentic cowboy song, like if you listen to like Thin Lizzy's like cowboy song, like it is not a cowboy song. It just sounds cool. Right. It's awesome. Yeah. But it is not a cowboy song. Like he just tried to make it one, because what does this Irish dude know in Dublin about writing cowboy music?
Yeah, probably not a lot.
Not a ton, I would think. I do have a question though. Why the moving around like for yourself? I mean, from Texas to going to especially Brooklyn and Los Angeles as well.
Yeah, it's a long story. Well, I first moved down to Austin for college, and then and to kind of be in the music scene. I didn't start playing guitar till I was 18, so it was pretty late in the game for me. So I wasn't going to be in musical college or anything like that. But I'd always been a huge music fan, huge blues fan. So being in Austin around that time was amazing, because I was pretty much living at Antone's and going to see guys like Pinetop Perkins, who played piano with Muddy Waters, and Hubert Sumlin, who was Alan Wolf's guitar player, and Jimmy Vaughn, and all of these guys. You know, that was sort of my education around the time that I also started playing music myself. So that was a big part of why I was in Austin and why I stuck around Austin. Just because as a budding musician and songwriter, I don't think there's any better place to cut your teeth, or at least there wasn't then, you know. And as far as why I left, that was sort of a different story. The Austin music scene is great in that every building is a music venue, pretty much. You know, there's thousands of places that a young artist can learn their craft and work on it, and play in front of people and get better. And it's a pretty welcoming community. But it's also, or at least back then, it was a pretty easy place to live. You know, cost of living was pretty cheap. You didn't have to work that hard. And as a result, not everybody, obviously, but there were a lot of people that you kind of just saw them doing the same thing. They had their weekly gigs that paid their bills, and that was about the extent of their drive. I've heard people call Austin the velvet rut, and
I've never heard that.
I felt that.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people use that, or if it's still the case, because I haven't lived there in 10 years now. But back then, anyway, it was just a very comfortable life, which there's a lot to be said for that. But for me, I kind of wanted to be out there on the road. I wanted to be pushing myself and seeing other places and making it hard, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah.
So I decided to hit the road. Got rid of my apartment, got rid of my day job, booked a month-long tour of the West Coast. I think it was something like 26 gigs in 30 days. The crazy part was that it was all places that I'd never even visited, much less played a gig.
Nice.
So,
would you just find a phone book and said, "I'll just call this guy"?
Pretty much, man. It was the early days of the internet that we currently know. Like, there's no Google Maps or anything back then, so I was doing a lot of research, trying to find out where people that I liked had played maybe a few years before, and would hit up those venues. And the tour itself was financially a disaster, as you'd expect.
As it should be. I mean, to be honest, yeah, of course.
I don't know why in my head at the time I thought, yeah, but if I go book all these gigs, people will be there in a place where nobody knows who I am.
If you book it, they will come.
That is definitely not how it works. But in my 20-something-year-old head, that's how it worked. And,
amazing.
So, more often than not, I was playing to the sound guy and the door person and the bartender, and that was it. But I had such a great time. I think I drove myself over 3,000 miles, just me in the car, and I had such an amazing time. And what it taught me was, one, that's not how you book a tour, or at least you shouldn't do that. But two, I loved being on the road. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so every kind of subsequent move just kind of came out of figuring out how to keep doing this thing, and how to be on the road, and how to just keep building this whole music dream, really. And as far as Brooklyn goes, I just loved New York and wanted an excuse to move there. I'd wanted to move there for like 6 or 7 years before I actually did, and living in LA was kind of the thing that finally made me say, screw it. If I'm going to live somewhere, it might as well be somewhere I like. And,
yeah, you learned some things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did.
Yeah, well, the whole reason I asked that, you brought it up because it was an interesting thing in my head. I felt like I picked up in this record. I just feel like you're a songwriter, at heart. But then, even deeper, it kind of feels like you kind of have this minstrel soul. You're up for an adventure, and the song that you write has a little bit of a timestamp to it, and I think I kind of feel that. I don't know, maybe it's like a Neil Young kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? He just kind of has this adventurous part of him of looking over a landscape and putting it in a song, and I'm able to be there, or I'm able to understand the parallelism of I like Gold Rush, for example. I definitely want to tap into that for a second, but I don't know. I kind of got that impression from you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean that's a good way to put it. I mean, I haven't been able to sit still for a long time, and a lot of people often say how do you do it being on the road pretty much all year? But my wife and I, she sings with me, and we travel together, and honestly, whenever we're at home for more than a week or two, we both just kind of start getting the shakes. It's like, man, we got to get back out there. We feel more at home when we're traveling around and going from cheap hotel to cheap hotel. than we do sitting on our own couch. So, yeah, I think it's either in you or it's not.
Yeah. Well, tell me about the UK, because I feel like you have some ties there. Because between the touring in England, the UK, and I know Ready the Horses was recorded there. So what's the tie-in with that? How do you know those people?
Yeah, it's how do I know them?
Yeah.
It's a few things got that going. The first was in 2011. I applied. There's this festival that happens every year in Belfast in Northern Ireland called the Belfast Nashville Songwriters Festival. So apparently, I didn't know this at the time, but apparently Belfast and Nashville are sister cities.
What?
And who knew?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so they have this festival every year that where they have songwriters from Ireland, obviously, and the UK, but then they bring a bunch of US songwriters over and have this festival in Belfast every year. And they were having a songwriting competition where you could enter your song, and if you won it, I think you won like $1,000 and the opportunity to come play the festival. And so for me, it was, oh man, I could go play in Ireland. That'd be amazing. So I entered this songwriting competition, and genuinely, not to sound humble or anything, I don't think many people applied. and so I ended up winning this thing. And they said, okay, cool, you've won, we're going to send you your $1,000. And I said, oh, great. What about playing the festival though? That was the thing that I wanted to do. And they said, oh yeah, well, yeah, if you want to come over, you can do it. So I used the $1,000 to buy a flight.
Nice.
And went over and played the festival. And it was the first time really that I'd been out of the country to do anything for music. I think I'd played in Toronto once. And so this was kind of the first real journey abroad. And man, I just had such an amazing time. And they invited me to come back the next year. And that year, I ended up meeting my wife. She is from Belfast and was volunteering at the festival. She was in the advertising world at the time and was just doing this as something to do on the weekend. And we just happened to meet and hit it off and, hung out until 4 a.m. that night and 4 a.m. the next night. And then we were pretty much dating from then on. So we were in a long distance relationship for 3.5 years, New York to Belfast. Been married for almost 5 years now. So that's kind of the main tie to the UK. The other one that sort of opened the door really for touring was there's a songwriter from England called David Ford.
Oh yeah, I know him.
He's brilliant. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the most talented songwriters and performers I've ever come across. Obviously, I'd never tell him that, but he definitely is. And he was playing a show in Philadelphia shortly after I moved up to New York, and I ended up getting the gig to open for him. And we hit it off and hung out. They ended up giving me a lift back to New York because they were going there the next day. And a few months later, he was going to be doing a UK tour, and so I was just hounding him, saying, "Man, let me come and open this thing." And finally, he did. And so this was early 2013, I think. Went over there and did, I think it was 15 shows all across the UK. And the way that he did it, he made it so that we were a band. So I was playing bass for him, which I'm not a bass player, but
Most bass players aren't, so you're there.
Yeah.
You're there.
Well, he basically said, if you want to come open the tour, here's how it's going to work.
Nice.
We're all going to be each other's band. And so he's like, "Can you play bass?" Yeah, sure, of course, yeah,
Yes.
whatever you want. I'll play trombone. Well, whatever to get me over there.
What a stereotype you fulfilled. Amazing.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty clear once we got in rehearsals that I did not play bass. But, at that point, there's no turning back.
Oh man.
But yeah, so that tour really kind of set the stage for me. We were playing clubs. Most of them were like 250 people. I think the London show had 500 people. So not enormous crowds, but great crowds to play for if you've never been somewhere. And it was amazing. The response was really great.
I feel like that's a typical thing, like in the UK. You know what I mean? Like I feel like they are like kind of like 300 people clubs, and
yeah,
they're usually packed out. Like very few and far in between are there like 2,500 seaters, like in the UK. And
yeah. I mean, you can find them. There are some really nice theaters that we've gotten to play, opening up for other people since. But there's a really great scene for that size venue, and people are really eager to go and support that kind of music. It doesn't have to be these massive places. They're as a sweeping generalization, they're pretty up for finding relatively unknown music and latching onto it. And that's what happened to us. After that tour, I immediately booked myself a tour coming back a couple of months later, playing pretty much all those same places. And just because of the fans that I made there, I had like 20, 30, 40 people at most of the gigs, which was amazing. And just kept going back, just kept touring there relentlessly and getting more support and all of that. And over the years, we've been able to build it up into a nice little following. And, thankfully we found that crowd, because we definitely have more of an audience there than we do anywhere in the world.
Isn't that, I mean, call it that you kind of work that market a little bit more, but at the same time, I feel like that part of the world honestly just kind of appreciates live music a lot more. That could be a personal opinion, but that's just what I feel.
I mean, my experience would certainly say that that's accurate. Part of it is that we've worked that market a lot more than anywhere else. We've also gotten opportunities to work that market more than anywhere else. It's not like we haven't been trying to pound the pavement over here to the same level. It's just, I think, I do think that they're more open to listening first, I guess. They'll listen to music, and if they like it, then they'll support it. Whereas over here and a lot of other places, if it's not on the charts, or it's not being written about in the big publications, or it's all over the radio, people just don't work as hard to seek it out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's almost as if like people have to double down on their marketing as opposed to like their record. And people will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their marketing, where they may, like, I don't know, skip a couple things, like when it comes to like their actual record, or like the music, or the thing that makes them them. But yeah, you're 100% right. In my point of view and eyes, I think I can totally agree with you on that. Like, it just takes a mega music campaign, whatever that means. I mean, you have to spend like millions of dollars if you're going to play like in the top seat markets. Like if you're going to play that Billboard chart, like radio game, like you just, it's not really the best of the best. It's really the people with the most money backing them up.
That's it. Yeah, it's the most money backing them up, and these days, especially, just given the way that the industry is gone, with record sales being non-existent really. Record labels aren't willing to take risks on anything. So the big ones, because there's just not the money to do it. Whereas they might pick somebody up, and you would get 3 or 4 records to see if you could break it. Whereas now, if you're lucky enough to get signed, man, if it doesn't happen immediately, after the first couple of singles come out, you're done.
Yeah.
They're dropping it. They feel like the development game is just a thing of the past. You can't. I guess they're not making enough money to bankroll that kind of thing anymore. And so what you see is they're only going to push what is guaranteed to sell millions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you basically nailed it with risk. I mean, this is the problem with art and business, right? I mean, business does not take risk, but that's what music is all about. That's what art should really be all about, is taking risks and pushing it forward. But when it comes to business, and especially with film and script writing, and especially when that applies to music, nobody's going to like double down on a risk unless they can associate it with something else. Taylor Swift has a cut on this song and they wrote it. So hands down, they're going to put money, invest on that album, that track, that artist, just because the association with Taylor Swift. And that's just a totally random. I've never written with Taylor Swift, but it's just a totally random thing. But it also applies. I do script writing and stuff on the side, and it's the same thing. The whole reason you keep seeing regurgitated movies, like you keep seeing Fast and the fucking Furious, like those movies are awful, and I know I'm going to alienate millions of people that watch them. But the reason that they keep doing the same thing is because it works. It's not because it's good. It's because
absolutely.
There's no risk behind it. So they can bring on Vin Diesel again after the dude should have retired after the first one, and maybe come back for Groot, but that's about it. But he can come back and they can sell like that movie for millions of dollars. It's the same exact thing in music. Like nobody's going to double down on a risk for the sake of art.
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. And, hopefully that tide will turn at some point, but that's definitely where we're at.
Yeah, and it used to not be that way. Like, I wonder, I guess maybe it was just like kind of the slide down effect of the line chart for music numbers and money coming in. Like when they said, well, we can't take any more risks. And so we really have to double down on something that we think that will work. So they rather double down on a I think than a risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh man, that's crazy. But anyway, the whole point I even brought up the UK is because I don't know, you just seem like you had some really like personal ties to it, and so you're married into it as well.
Yeah.
But you recorded a lot of this record over there too, right?
Yeah, all of it. Yeah. So we were on the road. We were doing a tour opening up for the Waterboys. I don't know if you know the Waterboys.
I don't.
They were massive in the UK and pretty big over here too, kind of late 80s. But we were doing a 21-date tour in the UK, opening up for them in a bunch of beautiful old theaters. So it was a month-long run. And the day after we played the last show, we went down to Eastbourne, which is on the southeast coast of England. And David Ford, he popped up again. A good friend of his owned a studio there called Echo Zoo Studios, which was, word's starting to get out now. It's sort of a hidden gem. I mean, you walk in there and it's very unassuming from the outside, but he's got so much amazing gear, just all of this incredible vintage analog gear. And thankfully he was willing to kind of do a mate's rate. And, so we went in there and cut it all live. It was all straight to 2-inch tape, mixed down to 1/4-inch tape. There wasn't a computer really involved until
you recorded to
put it on
tape.
CD.
That's amazing.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like you hear that people still do it, but they basically bounce the tape. But recording the tape,
right,
dude, that's a whole different level. Have you done it before?
That was my first time doing it, and I had made records before, essentially doing the same thing, where it's all live, and then you come back and do background vocals and percussion and that kind of stuff. But the main track, playing and singing was live. But when you're doing it on Pro Tools, you know that there's a safety net there, even if you're not using it it's there in your head, you know. Whereas on tape, there's not really a safety net, and we couldn't afford, you know, too many reels of tape. So basically you would do a take and then you'd say, is that good enough or not? And if it wasn't, you'd wipe over it and go again, you know. So you didn't even have be able to be like, oh, well, let's check the other takes, you know, and see which one's better. You have to make immediate decisions, you know.
Yeah. That's a whole different stress level. Like I feel like the most perfect example, like if you ever watch like Tom Petty's documentary, like Damn the Torpedoes, like when they're recording the tape and they're basically wanting to murder each other because they kept doing the same wrong mistakes over like 40 takes of the same song. Like you have to know what you're doing and make those decisions like accurately.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's stressful.
And it definitely can be. I mean, for me, it was just such a blast doing it. Now, granted, you know, there was also kind of the novelty factor of, oh man, we're getting to make a record on tape. This is amazing. And we had been on the road for a solid month playing a lot of these songs live. So we were fairly tight as a band at that point. But that said, you know, you definitely had to, you had to get it right or live with what you got. And, you know, there's a few things on the record where if we had more time, or money and therefore time, you know, there were definitely things we could have done that we didn't get to do. But all in all, I mean, I'm very pleased with how it turned out, and it was just a genuine joy to do it, to be in the studio and work that way.
Yeah, man, for sure. Now, tell me about the horn sections, because like the record and the songs even released so far, that I mean, they're pretty like prevalent, like in the mix.
I mean, we had 3 different guys. I'm trying to remember. I think for Take It From Me, they were all playing together, and then we would stack the parts, so it was just this massive wall of horns.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there were a couple of others, like Gold Rush. Just the one guy was playing baritone sax on that.
Yeah, that Barry sax is sexy on that track. It's awesome. I mean, it's just so mean and gritty.
Yeah. Well, that one, that whole song, honestly, we were basically just like, what would Tom Waits do? You know, what would Tom do in this situation? And so at one point, our drummer was on the floor of the studio, and we mic'd up him hitting a metal serving tray with a hammer just over and over again.
That's awesome. Yes.
That was amazing.
That's amazing. First of all, that you would take the time and do like creative recording. Like that just doesn't, dude, that just doesn't happen in Nash. You know what I mean? Like at most, like they'll put chains in a bucket and drop it on the floor, and then that's your chain track. You know? That's the most creative as they'll get. But dude, that's amazing.
To be honest, the trickiest part for us with the horns, and again, this was down to lack of money, was none of us could arrange horn parts really. We could kind of sing what it was that we wanted and all of that. And we just had to get guys in there that were recommended by friends of friends of friends. And so there was no kind of strict arrangement. So coming up with the end part, particularly on Take It From Me, it was tricky. and you know, it's like pulling teeth at times. I mean, we definitely got there in the end, but for a while we were like, oh God, what have we gotten ourselves into? Because, you know, I think the group that we got in were supposed to be guys that played together all the time, but then a couple of guys couldn't do it, and then they recommended other people. So none of them had played together. And unlike, you know, guitar players or an organ player or something like that, a lot of horn guys aren't used to just coming up with stuff on the fly.
No.
You know. So it was tricky to say the least.
Wow.
But when it finally came together, you know, we were all just jumping around the control room, you know, saying, "Oh my God, it's amazing! Listen to that! It's just so fat and, you know, punchy, and it was great."
Just, I mean, dude, that sheer warmness of just the tape itself. I mean, you can tell a difference. Is there going to be a vinyl of this, by the way?
Yeah. So the record itself is an interesting one. It's already out in the UK. It came out. So we made the record on our own, and then Decca, part of Universal, ended up picking it up for the UK.
Wow.
And so they put it out. They're supposed to do a worldwide release, but as often happens with these things, it didn't turn out quite the way any of us wanted it to.
Oh, wow.
So we've since, regained rights and are now finally getting to release it over here. So I do have some copies of it on vinyl that are imports from the UK, and hopefully we'll be able to press it up on this side of the pond as well.
Bro, you really should. Like, just because of the high def quality I've been listening to, like, you can tell the warmness, and just having like that, I don't know, that Stax, like Muscle Shoals kind of thing, like going on, like with that snare sound, and of course just with the horns and those organs, bro. Like this is a record that's like begging to be on vinyl. Like this is just...
that was. I mean, all of that is kind of what we were going for the whole time. The whole Muscle Shoals vibe was a pretty huge influence on the songs just being written, but then whenever it came time to lay them down, I mean, that was a constant reference point for us. And it was funny, actually, the tour that we were on right before we went in with the Waterboys, they had David Hood playing bass with them on that tour, from the Swampers.
Yeah.
And it was on all of those amazing records, like on Staple Singers, I'll Take You There. You hear Mavis say, Little Baby, and then he starts playing bass. Well, that's David Hood.
Yeah.
And so it was cool to have gotten to meet him and hang out with him a bit before going and making that record. You definitely felt like, oh man, we're gonna make David proud on this,
Oh, that's amazing. That's cool. Hanging out with David Hood. I mean, that's like, I don't know, few probably get to do that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it only happened a couple of times, but he was. He's such a sweetheart. It's almost like your grandpa's on the road with you, but your grandpa happens to be like the hippest dude that was on all these amazing records.
I know, right? Like, I just feel like hanging out with anybody like associated with that Muscle Shoals thing. Like, that's, I don't know. I just feel like those guys should be like one head of Mount Rushmore or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, that's amazing. That's pretty cool. All right, so Gold Rush, it's out, and it's gonna be the thing. And I think I picked up. I think I picked up like kind of the association, but I want you to tell me. I want to know if I got it right or not. So where does Gold Rush kind of come from, and what's it all about to you?
Yeah, so that one, it started its life being a song about the gold rush in California back in the 1800s. And so I had written the first couple of verses in the chorus and sort of was sending it down that path. And then as I was writing it, it sort of struck me that the greed and corruption and craziness that fueled that era wasn't all that different than modern day Wall Street or the financial district. And so I wanted to kind of draw that parallel. And my buddy David Ford, who loves a good political rant, got with me and we wrote, he wrote that third verse that kind of tied it all in together, saying about a racket back east. And he even threw in some little clues where you say they could catch you with dirty sacks of gold, and then the next line starts with man. That way you have Goldman Sachs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if anyone actually picked up on that, but it was a fun little thing.
But it's like a quick little whip, and I picked up on it, and that was the moment I said, okay, this is where we're going with it. There's going to be a parallel, like from the gold rush for California and how they basically screwed over, murdered everybody. It's basically There Will Be Blood, but gold edition.
That's it.
And then and then of course the sheer criminality of Wall Street itself. Yeah, that's cool, man. I love when I heard it. I didn't catch it at first, or maybe second or third time. It was kind of The Matrix. I had to watch it like for the seventh time to actually get it. So So listening to Gold Rush probably around that time, actually like looking at the lyrics at that point, I said, "Oh, okay, this is clever writing. Good for them."
Oh, good. I'm glad you picked up on it. You know, it's one of those things that I imagine most people just listen to it and like, oh, that's a cool bluesy tune, you know.
Yeah, but it's also the thing of like, it's like a secret middle finger. You know, it's like it's a secret like fuck you to the man, which is pretty much amazing. And I'm always a fan of that.
Well, I'm glad glad you twigged onto that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So especially, I mean, with the current state of things, I mean, we totally went on a rant on it like earlier, and especially now, like Gold Rush is out. Like, do you feel like it's like kind of the meaning has changed in any way, or is it still feel the same to you?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things that sadly is kind of evergreen. You know, that was really more about the financial crisis in 2008, but you know, look where we are now, and oh wow, not a whole lot's changed, you know, and with this pandemic and the chance that, you know, a lot of people are going to get bailed out, maybe the average Joe too, but I would bet that we're pretty far down the list, you know. So who knows? But yeah, it definitely seems to be fairly applicable to current times, which I'm glad.
Yeah, man, I think so. I think you got a good thing on your hands, and I hope you kind of figure out that legal shit too. Release it on the state side. That's insane. Well,
it's definitely happening. You know, I call it the little record that could, because we made it with virtually no money. You know, signed it to a label that ended up not being great, and I mean, we could spend hours talking about that, but it's not a unique story. It's happened to loads and loads of artists.
It's the story that's retold over and over. It just sucks when it fucking happens. Like, I don't know. You seem like a good dude to me. I wish we could like do this in person, but I don't know. You always hate like for bad things to happen to good people, and especially when it's art and your craft, it's just kind of like, well, shit.
Yeah, I mean that was the biggest part of it, you know, was kind of like, you know, to these guys it doesn't mean anything, you know, but to me, I spent years making this, and it is me, you know, it's every ounce of me is in this, and so you know, that's why we fought so hard to get it back, and you know, you mentioned Tom Petty earlier. To be honest, he was a huge influence on that side of things, because of the way that he often did battle in the music industry with the big wigs. It was kind of like, you know what, you can stand up to them. You know, chances are slim that you're going to win, and we only got a partial win, but it would have been a whole lot easier to just back off, you know, and move on. And I'm glad we didn't do that.
Yeah, man. Middle fingers to the man.
Amen.
That's it, folks. You know how it usually goes. They come, we talk, then that's about it. Well, hope you guys got down with it. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Gold Rush is the single that's out now. Be in touch with Jarrod Dickenson. Go follow him at Jarrod Dickenson. And, of course, go to his website, jarroddickenson.com. Keep track with those tour dates, but then also find out when that album release for Ready the Horses is going to be out. It is a really solid, great record. It is something to really dig into. The vinyl will be legit. It's cut the tape. We already been through it. You guys know, especially you made it this far. You already know. But again, all that stuff at Jarrod Dickenson, jarroddickenson.com. Thanks, guys, for listening. I'm Brandon. About to sign off here. Another week of the quarantines. just hanging out in my own personal headspace. I don't know about you guys, but I get a little bit lonely, even though there's just a couple of people around. But you feel down in the dumps, I'm always up for a talk. I'm honestly interested. You guys want to get down to do something on the old live channels, on the old streaming things? I don't know. Casual talks, sipping Sundays. I don't know. I'm here, but not there. Insta Live. Love to know if you guys want to just talk. I don't care. I'm so easy, it's not even funny. But you can get all that stuff at SMI Podcast across the social. And of course, go to smipodcast.com. I really hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. You felt in tune. You felt associated with it. You learned something. Maybe you did. Maybe you found it interesting. Just share it. Share it out there in the world. Just let me know what you think by sharing it. I don't know. Sharing is caring. It really is. Unless it's herpes. Keep that to yourself. But share the episode at SMI Podcast again for everything. Again, share it with a friend. I'd appreciate it. Jarrod would appreciate it. Let people know that there's good music out in the world. I think that's all I got. I want everybody to take care of themselves, all right? Be safe. Don't be stupid. Stay at home. Cover up. Put that face mask on. Just take care of one another. That's the biggest thing. If you're going to be an idiot, at least think about the other people out there, okay? Don't be selfish. All right, I love you guys. Again, take care of one another. Happy surviving. See you soon.